All right, so let's talk about a hiring scenario. To go ahead and give a hypothetical, what would you do in this situation as far as wrongful termination statement? All right, because want to forget and sway the details while not telling the prevalence of the details. So, all right. Despite the factor of working at a few different fast food or restaurant chains in the past, all right. Ultimately, Ruby Tuesday was a unique situation. Not many times that your manager ends up going ahead and outside of store hours paying you to test their bear mace on you while simultaneously trying to avoid a assault with a deadly weapon charge. You know, we're we've gone over Ruby Tuesday enough, all right? But let's go over Sonic, all right? Because details are pertinent, very important. All right. So, Sonic. All right. Very short term employment, but very short term employment for very good reason. I get hired on. When I end up getting hired on, the hiring manager, apparently same name, goes ahead and gives me a dirty uniform. All right. Then tells me I need to bring this home, wash it, and have it ready for my first shift. Okay. First shift ended up coming. And keep in mind, I walk in the uniform shirt, slacks, and no slip steel toed boots. All right? The no slip steel toed boots, keep in mind, they are supposed to be resistant to slip from oil, whether it be vegetable oil or whether it ends up being motor oil. Whichever oil, it's supposed to prevent you from slipping. Good traction. That was the key. All right. Steel toed factor. Any machinery end up going and potentially falling on your toes. You've got the added protection. You've got the cushioning. All right. Anyway, the point in time of the year that the hiring ended up happening is important. All right. Because working there was a very short time, but with very important ramifications. All right. So, when I got hired on, it was a few weeks before National Hot Dog Day. All right? So keep in mind, Sonic on a yearly basis ends up having hot dogs really, really cheap. We are talking half the price of what Costco usually ends up charging for their hot dogs. All right? On that one specific day of the year. Whether you end up getting a Coney Island, whether you get a Chicago, made differently, but ultimately, same food. All right. But having to make it an expedited rate. So we're talking, think the I Love Lucy, chocolate conveyor belt episode. Just rush, 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 rush. Now, here's the thing about it also. All right. Hired on. Went to go work my first week. Got told that the first week's check gets withheld. All right. I call bullshit on that. But ultimately, I, had to take their word for it because, signing the paycheck. Second week, because apparently getting paid bi-weekly, first withheld check doesn't end up getting added into this, into the actual first check. So I said, you off a whole week's worth of wages, complaining, oh no, we just backlog your check for a week. Okay, I gotta take your word for it. National Hot Dog Day ends up coming. Now keep in mind, I'm working the scheduled hours, right? I'm clocking in when I was told to be clocked in. I clocked out when I was told that I had to be clocked out. All right? Hiring manager, Matt, ends up asking me, hey, is there any chance you could go ahead and stay overtime? My answer to him is a resounding no. All right? Now, he wants to be big boss manager. All right? And he's thinking, what harm could me trying to force you to do overtime do? What could be more important than you wanting to go ahead and refuse overtime that I'm trying to force on you? And my response was the very real, the outcome that happened because of that bullshit. Well, you asked me to work overtime. I told you I couldn't. You wanted to complain and say that ultimately I was not in my right to be able to turn down overtime that you were offering, and I should be honored that you were offering it, while wondering what harm could me not working overtime do, while simultaneously having a double amputee that was not able to leave the fucking house at the house. And the house was in walking distance, yes. But at the same time, not enough response time by foot to be able to make it to them, so that way, that, in case they died without anybody noticing, that ultimately somebody would be there to give the notification of, hey, this geriatric double amputee just ended up going into cardiac arrest. A quicker response time could have saved his fucking life. What could have been more important than responding to his fucking cardiac arrest? Oh, apparently to Sonic's fucking scheduling manager, apparently wanting to mandate overtime was more important than this elderly geriatric double amputee's fucking life. So please, hiring manager from Sonic, Matt. And we are talking to Sonic from Lexington, North Carolina. My question to you is, do you still feel like you are in the right for going ahead and asking what harm could be done by you trying to force overtime? And if the appropriate response to the situation is not you retracting your rhetorical statement, showing a little bit of empathy and compassion, and clarifying, yeah, it's not a good look when somebody assists in being a caretaker. They're using some of their time to go ahead and make some pocket money because they have family obligations of trying to keep a family member alive. And well, your sense of entitlement tells you that you are allowed to lord yourself over my time in any which way, shape, or form that you want. You simultaneously want to deflect the harm that your request ended up having in the situation, especially when that actual ward, that double amputee, ends up actually fucking dying at the same point in time this happened. But you had already submitted the paperwork to start the fucking lawsuit because you needed to defend yourself for wrongful termination. So now my question is, Sonic, as a corporate entity, do you support the scheduling manager going ahead and accosting the grieving, asking what harm could trying to force you to do mandatory overtime do? Well, the response in the first place that they wanted to pretend like they did not get was geriatric double amputee family member with cardiac issues could go into cardiac arrest, and I would not be in a close enough vicinity to get there in a quick enough response time. That's the fucking harm it could do. I apologize that my family's medical situations are not convenient to your bottom line. That does not mean that ultimately, just because that circumstance was a very important detail to me, and a very important detail for anybody that would end up going and litigating on the issue to know, Sonic, as a corporate entity, do you support the scheduling manager's stance? And understand, now It is no longer past tense. This has happened. The hiring manager wanted to start a lawsuit, wanted to claim they could force overtime, while simultaneously wanting to disregard the factor of the worst that could possibly happen is the situation that happened because your fucking scheduling manager wanted to go on a power trip. That part. That's the fucking part I would want to have to be addressed over a jury, over a judge, all of it, and adjudicated, with the representative from Sonic having to go ahead and make a statement on behalf of the corporate shareholders.